This is HOA Justice Stories. I did not raise my voice, I raised my evidence packet. I am standing in my driveway at 6:45 in the morning, holding a snow pusher that I just leaned against my tire 2 minutes ago, and Laura Nelson is already screaming at me about property damage. She is pointing at a salt stain on the sidewalk like I just kerosene bombed the entire block. She tells me this is a violation of winter maintenance standards and I am getting fined $200, effective immediately. I ask her what standards, and she says if I want mercy, move somewhere without an HOA. My name is Alex. I am 32, and I moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin 8 months ago for an appliance repair job that keeps me on the road from 7 in the morning until dark most days. I bought a small 2-bedroom house in the Harborview Coldfront HOA community because the price was right and the listing said the HOA was, quote, minimal and professional. That was a lie. The HOA here operates like a compliance chair with a ruler, and a stopwatch is running a military inspection every single day. Laura Nelson is that compliance chair. She is middle-aged, white, with dark brown shoulder-length straight hair, and she wears a purple puffer coat and a pink knit beanie like she is trying to blend into a preschool field trip while she ruins your life. She drags a portable folding sign stand into every confrontation like she is about to announce a flash sale on misery. The stakes for me are real. I am trying to refinance my mortgage because my interest rate is brutal, and any lien threat on the title will wreck the deal. My lender already told me they cannot close if there is an active HOA dispute on record. Laura knows this because she has access to the community portal where everyone can see whose loans are in process. She has been targeting me since the first snowfall in November, and it is now mid-January. Every time it snows, she invents a new rule. Last week, it was the angle of my shovel path. This week, it is a salt stain. Next week, it will probably be the font on my house numbers. Laura is holding a flashlight with a blue beam even though the sun is coming up. She uses that flashlight during late-night snow patrols, walking the block at 11 at night to check if anyone missed a corner or left a chunk of ice on the curb. I have seen her from my window. She writes notes on a clipboard, takes photos with her phone, and then sends violation notices through the HOA management company by 8 the next morning. Selective enforcement with escalating daily fines that reset every snowfall. If you get one violation, the next snowfall triggers a new cycle. You are never clear. Laura is telling me the salt stain is property damage because it discolors the concrete and violates the aesthetic standards in the handbook. I tell her I have read the handbook 3 times and there is no rule about salt stains. She says the rule is in the appendix under winter maintenance guidelines, and if I do not have the updated appendix, that is my problem. I ask her to show me a copy. She says she does not need to carry copies because everyone is responsible for knowing the rules. Then she says the line that will haunt her later. She says, "I do not need proof, I have paperwork and vibes." I am already late for work. I have a service call in Wauwatosa at 7:30 for a busted dishwasher, and if I do not leave in 5 minutes, I am going to catch traffic and blow the appointment window. I tell Laura I will handle the salt stain when I get home tonight. She says tonight is too late. The fine starts accruing at 7 this morning, and it is $200 per day until the stain is removed. I ask her how I am supposed to remove a stain that is literally just salt residue on concrete. She says I can pressure wash it or I can pay someone to do it, but it has to be done by end of business today, or the fine doubles tomorrow. I am about to tell her to get off my property, but then she pulls out her phone and shows me a violation notice that was already sent to the management company. The timestamp says 6:15 this morning. She filed it before she even came over here. The notice has a photo of my driveway, the snow pusher leaning against my tire, and a close-up of the salt stain. There is no readable text on the screen, but I can see the email draft is already marked sent. She grins and says this is the third violation this winter, which means I am now on the escalation track. One more and I get referred to the legal team for a hearing. I drive to the service call and I am furious the whole way. I am replaying the conversation in my head, and I am realizing Laura did not even give me a chance to fix the problem before she filed. She filed first, confronted second. That is the HOA method here. They do not warn you. They fine you and then tell you about it. And the fines are structured to escalate fast. 200 today, 400 tomorrow, 800 the day after. It is not about compliance. It is about revenue and control. When I get home that night, I pressure wash the stain. It takes 20 minutes and the stain does not even fully disappear because salt etches concrete over time. But I take photos with timestamps and I send them to the management company with a dispute letter. I write that the rule Laura cited does not exist in the handbook I was given at closing, and I request a formal copy of the updated appendix she referenced. I also write that I removed the stain within 12 hours of being notified, which should be considered reasonable compliance. I hit send and I feel a little better, but not much. I know Laura is not going to let this go. 2 days later, I get a response from the management company. They say the fine stands because the stain was not removed by end of business on the day of the violation, which was the deadline Laura set. They say the updated appendix was posted to the resident portal in October, and it is my responsibility to check the portal for updates. I log into the portal and I search for the appendix. It is not there. I search by keyword, by date, by file name. Nothing. I email the management company and tell them the document is not on the portal. They reply and say it was posted, and if I cannot find it, I need to contact IT support. IT support is a third-party vendor that charges $50 per ticket. I do not pay the $50. I just screenshot the empty search results and I add them to my dispute file. The next week, we get a big snow, 8 inches overnight. I wake up at 5:30 in the morning and I start shoveling my driveway and the sidewalk in front of my house. The HOA rules say you have to clear your walk within 24 hours of the snow stopping, which is reasonable. But the HOA plow comes through at 6 in the morning and it leaves a 3-foot berm of packed ice and slush at the end of every driveway. The plow driver does not care. He just pushes everything to the sides and keeps moving. By the time I finish shoveling, the plow has already come through twice and I have a new berm that is even bigger. I shovel it again. It takes another 30 minutes. My back is screaming and I am sweating through my jacket even though it is 15 degrees outside. I am about to go inside when Laura appears from around the corner. She is walking the block with her blue beam flashlight even though it is daylight now, and she has her clipboard. She stops in front of my driveway and she points at the berm I just shoveled. She says I did not break up the ice chunks left by the plow, and that is a safety hazard. I tell her I shoveled twice and the plow just came through 10 minutes ago. She says the plow is not my responsibility. The ice chunks are. She says I need to break them up immediately or I am getting another fine. I tell her the chunks are frozen solid and I do not have an ice chipper. She says I can use a shovel or a hammer or I can call a service, but it has to be done now. I am holding the shovel and I am staring at her and I am thinking about how satisfying it would be to just walk inside and let her file whatever she wants, but I know she will. So I spend another 20 minutes smashing ice chunks with the edge of the shovel. My hands are numb. My shoulders are burning. By the time I finish, Laura is gone. I go inside and I get ready for work and I am already an hour behind schedule. I miss my first appointment. I have to reschedule and the customer is annoyed. My boss texts me and asks what happened. I tell him HOA snow drama. He tells me to get it together. That afternoon I get another violation notice. This one is for leaving snow piles too close to the curb. The notice says snow piles must be at least 3 feet from the curb to allow for emergency vehicle access. I go outside and I measure. My snow pile is 2 feet 11 inches from the curb. I take a photo with a tape measure in frame. I send it to the management company and I write that I am in compliance. They reply and say the rule is 3 feet minimum, and 2 feet 11 inches is a violation. The fine is $150. I write back and say that is absurd and I am disputing it. They reply and say I can dispute it at the next board meeting, which is in 3 weeks. The fine is due in 7 days. I call my neighbor Marcus. Marcus is a renter advocate who works for a non-profit that helps people fight landlord abuse. He is not technically an HOA expert, but he knows how to file complaints and he knows how to read contracts. I tell him everything that has been happening, and he tells me to start keeping a timeline. Every notice, every email, every fine, every interaction with Laura. He says HOA disputes are won with documentation, and if the management company is making mistakes, I need to catch them all on record. He also tells me to request the meeting minutes for any vote that approved the updated winter rules. He says if the board never voted on the rules are not enforceable. That is the angle. I ask him if he will help me pull the records. He says yes. Marcus and I spend the next 2 days going through the HOA portal and the management company email archive. We find the original handbook from 2018, the amended handbook from 2021, and a draft appendix from 2023 that was never finalized. The draft appendix has stricter snow rules, but it was never voted on. The minutes from the October 2023 board meeting show a discussion about snow enforcement, but no vote. The minutes from November show the same. December, same. No vote. The rules Laura is enforcing do not legally exist. I print everything and I put it in a binder. Marcus tells me this is gold, but I need to be ready for the management company to claim the vote happened and they just did not record it. He says I need to find someone who was at those meetings who can confirm no vote happened. That is harder. I start asking around the neighborhood. Most people do not go to board meetings. The ones who do are either on the board or they are Laura's friends. But there is one guy, Dennis, who goes to every meeting because he is retired and he has nothing better to do. Dennis lives 3 doors down, and he has been in the neighborhood for 12 years. I knock on his door, and I ask him if he remembers a vote on the snow rules. He says no, there was no vote. He says Laura proposed the rules in October, but the board tabled the discussion because they did not have quorum. Then in November, Laura just started enforcing the rules anyway. Dennis says he complained to the board president, but the president told him the rules were already in effect, and if he had a problem, he could file a formal complaint. Dennis did not file. He just stopped going to meetings. I ask him if he would be willing to write a statement for me. He says yes, but he does not want Laura to know he helped me. I tell him I will keep it quiet until I need it. By now it is late January and I have 3 active fines totaling $650. I have disputed all of them, but the management company is not budging. They send me a letter saying if I do not pay by February 5th, they will refer the account to collections and start the lien process. That is the time pressure. February 5th is 11 days away, and if they file a lien packet, my refinance is dead. My lender already told me any lien, even a disputed one, is a deal breaker. I need to stop this before it gets to that point. I call the management company, and I ask to speak to the HOA attorney. They tell me the attorney only takes calls from board members. I tell them I am being threatened with collections on disputed charges and I need legal guidance. They tell me to put it in writing and someone will get back to me. I send a detailed email outlining the missing vote, the non-existent rules, and the timeline of selective enforcement. I attach the meeting minutes and Dennis's statement. I wait 3 days. No response. On February 1st, I get a new notice. This one is not about snow. This one is an amenities lockout threat. The notice says that due to unpaid fines, my access to community amenities will be suspended effective immediately. The community has a small fitness room and a meeting space that residents can reserve. I have never used either one, but the threat feels like a power trip. Laura is escalating because she knows I am fighting back. The notice also says that if the fines are not paid by February 5th, the HOA will proceed with collections and legal action, and I will be responsible for all attorney fees and costs. That is the second escalation step. Threatening to send collections even though the fees are disputed and under appeal. It is harassment, and it is designed to make me give up. I do not give up. I call Marcus and I tell him I need to go to the board meeting. The next meeting is February 3rd, 2 days before the deadline. Marcus says he will come with me. He also tells me to bring copies of everything for the board and for the attorney if the attorney is there. He says I need to make it clear that I am not paying fines for rules that do not exist, and if they try to file a lien, I will file a complaint with the state. That gets their attention because HOA complaints in Wisconsin go to the Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, and the state takes them seriously. If the management company has been backdating notices or enforcing non-existent rules, that is a violation of consumer protection law. The state can fine them and force them to refund fees. Marcus tells me to mention that in the meeting. Let them know I am not bluffing. The meeting is on a Tuesday night at 7. It is held in the community meeting room, which is a windowless box with folding chairs and a long table at the front. Laura is sitting at the table with the board president, the treasurer, and the management company rep. There are maybe 8 other residents in the room, including Marcus and Dennis. I sit in the front row and I put my binder on my lap. Laura sees me and her face tightens. She leans over to the board president and whispers something. He nods. The meeting starts with the usual stuff. Budget updates, landscaping proposals, pool maintenance for the summer. Then they get to enforcement. Laura stands up and she gives a report on winter violations. She says compliance has been poor this year, and the board needs to authorize more aggressive enforcement, including expedited lien filings for repeat offenders. She does not say my name, but everyone knows who she is talking about. The board president asks if there are any questions. I raise my hand. I stand up and I introduce myself. I say I am here to dispute 3 fines totaling $650 that were issued under rules that were never voted on by the board. I open my binder and I pull out the meeting minutes from October, November, and December 2023. I read the sections about snow enforcement out loud. I point out that there is no record of a vote. I say the rules Laura is enforcing are from a draft appendix that was never finalized, and therefore they are not legally binding. I also say that I have a signed statement from a resident who attended those meetings confirming that no vote took place. The board president looks confused. He asks Laura if this is true. Laura says the rules were approved by email vote, and the minutes do not reflect that because it was an administrative oversight. I ask her to provide the email chain. She says she does not have it with her. I ask the management company rep if they have a record of an email vote. The rep looks uncomfortable. He says he will have to check and get back to us. I tell him I need an answer now because the deadline to pay these fines is in 4 days and I am not paying for rules that do not exist. The room is silent. The board president says they will table the enforcement report and revisit it after they confirm the vote. Laura is furious. She says the vote happened and this is a waste of time. The president ignores her and moves to the next agenda item. After the meeting, Marcus pulls me aside and tells me that was perfect. He says the board president is rattled because he knows if I file a state complaint, the whole enforcement program is going to get audited. The management company rep is rattled because he knows they screwed up. Laura is rattled because her power trip just got exposed in front of the whole room. Marcus says I need to follow up with a formal written request for the email vote records within 24 hours, and if they cannot produce them, I need to file the state complaint immediately. I tell him I will. Then Dennis comes over and he tells me Laura tried to corner him after the meeting and asked if he talked to me. Dennis told her no. He is scared of her. I thank him for the statement and I tell him it made the difference. The next morning, I send an email to the management company and the board president requesting copies of the email vote that Laura referenced. I give them until end of business Friday, which is February 5th, the same day the fines are supposedly due. I also attach a draft complaint to the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, and I say that if I do not receive the records by the deadline, I will file it. That is my leverage. I am letting them know I am holding a trump card, but I am not showing them everything yet. I want them to panic and make a mistake. I let her get the last word, because I wanted the last consequence. By Thursday afternoon, I get a response. It is not from the management company. It is from the HOA attorney. The attorney says the board has reviewed my request, and they have determined that the email vote referenced by Laura Nelson does not exist. The attorney says the snow rules in question were never formally adopted, and therefore any fines issued under those rules are being rescinded. The attorney also says the board is conducting an internal review of the enforcement process and they will be in touch with next steps. That is code for Laura is in trouble. The email does not say it directly, but I can read between the lines. The management company screwed up and the attorney is cleaning up the mess before I file a complaint that costs them money. I forward the email to Marcus and I write, "We won." He writes back, "Not yet." Because the next day, Laura shows up at my house again. It is 7 in the morning and I am getting ready for work. I hear knocking on the door and I open it, and she is standing there with her portable folding sign stand and her flashlight. She is shaking with rage. She tells me I just got her reprimanded by the board and the management company, and this is not over. She says she is going to find another violation, and when she does, I am going to pay triple. She says if I want mercy, move somewhere without an HOA. That is the second time she has said that line, and it is not going to age well for her. I tell her I have nothing to say to her and I close the door. She stands outside for another minute, yelling through the door that I am a problem resident and I am making the neighborhood unsafe. Then she leaves. I text Marcus and tell him what happened. He tells me to document it and file a harassment complaint with the board. I do. The board does not respond. A week goes by, and nothing happens. My fines are officially rescinded. I get a refund check for $650 in the mail. I deposit it, and I feel like I can finally breathe. My refinance is back on track. The lender confirms there are no liens on the title and we are clear to close. I am thinking maybe this is over. Then we get another snow. 6 inches overnight. I wake up at 5:30 and I start shoveling. The plow comes through at 6 and it leaves the usual berm. I shovel it again. I break up the ice chunks with the shovel. I measure the distance from the snow pile to the curb. 3 feet 2 inches. I take a photo. I am being paranoid, but I do not care. I go inside, and I get ready for work. I am about to leave when I look out the window and I see Laura standing at the end of my driveway with her phone out, taking photos. I go outside and I ask her what she is doing. She says she is documenting a new violation. I ask her what violation. She points at the snow pusher leaning against my tire. She says snow removal equipment cannot be stored in the driveway because it obstructs vehicle access. I tell her the snow pusher is leaning against my tire and it is not obstructing anything. She says the rule is no equipment in the driveway, period. I ask her to show me the rule. She says it is in the handbook under Vehicle and Parking Standards. I have read that section. There is no rule about snow equipment. I tell her that. She says I am wrong and I am getting fined. She walks away. I am standing there holding my keys and I am shaking with anger. This is never going to end unless I end it. I call Marcus and I tell him Laura is inventing new rules again. He tells me to request a copy of the rule in writing before I do anything else. I email the management company and I ask for the specific section and page number of the rule Laura cited. I also ask for clarification on whether snow removal equipment is considered a violation under Vehicle and Parking Standards. I get a response the next day. The management company says there is no rule prohibiting snow removal equipment in the driveway. They say Laura was mistaken and no fine will be issued. I forward the email to Laura with no comment. She does not respond. But I know she is not done. She is going to keep trying until she finds something that sticks, or until someone forces her to stop. 2 days later, I am at a service call in Shorewood when I get a text from my neighbor across the street. The text says there is a tow truck in front of my house and the driver is hooking up my car. I call the neighbor and I ask what is happening. She says Laura is standing there with a clipboard and she told the tow driver my car is illegally parked. I tell the neighbor my car is in my own driveway and it is not illegally parked. The neighbor says she knows, but the tow driver does not care. I tell her to go outside and ask the driver to wait. I am on my way. I hang up and I drive back to my house going 15 over the limit the whole way. I am 20 minutes away and I am praying the tow truck is still there when I get home. I pull onto my street and the tow truck is still there. My car is halfway up on the flatbed. Laura is standing on the sidewalk with her arms crossed and her portable folding signs stand next to her. The tow driver is a guy in his 50s with a green jacket and a tired expression. I jump out of my van and I run over and I tell him to stop. He says he has an authorization from the HOA to tow the vehicle. I tell him the car is in my own driveway, and there is no violation. Laura interrupts and says the car is parked in the driveway in violation of the guest parking rule. I tell her I live here. This is not a guest parking issue. She says the driveway is considered a guest parking zone during snow emergencies, and all vehicles must be moved to the street. I tell her that is insane and there is no such rule. She says the rule was enacted last week by emergency board action, and I was notified by email. I pull out my phone and I check my email. There is no notice. I show Laura my phone and I tell her there is no email. She says I must have deleted it. I tell the tow driver this is harassment and I am not letting him tow my car. He looks at Laura. She tells him to proceed. He looks at me. I pull out the binder I keep in my van now with all my HOA documents and I show him the meeting minutes proving Laura has a history of enforcing non-existent rules. I also pull out the attorney email rescinding my fines. I tell him if he tows this car under a fake rule, I am filing a complaint against his company and the HOA, and he is going to be named in it. He stares at the documents. Then he unhooks my car and he tells Laura he is not towing it. She screams at him. She says she will report him to his company and he will lose the HOA contract. He says he does not care. He is not towing a car from someone's own driveway without a legitimate violation. He gets in the truck and he leaves. That is the evidence reveal. I show the tow driver the proof before the hook goes on and he refuses. Laura turns to me and she is shaking. She tells me I just cost the HOA a towing contract and I am going to pay for it. I tell her she just tried to have my car towed under a rule that does not exist and I am filing a harassment complaint with the board and the state. She says I do not have proof. I hold up my phone and I tell her I recorded the whole conversation, including her admitting the rule was enacted last week, which is a lie because the board has not met since February 3rd. She goes pale. Then she says, "I do not need proof, I have paperwork and vibes." I smile. I tell her that line is going to look great in my complaint. She storms off. I get in my car and I drive to work. My hands are shaking the whole way. I cannot believe I just stopped a tow with a binder and a phone recording. But I did. And now I have everything I need to bury her. That night, I sit down with Marcus and I draft a formal complaint to the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection. The complaint outlines the timeline of violations, the non-existent rules, the rescinded fines, the harassment, the tow attempt, and Laura's repeated pattern of inventing enforcement actions without board approval. I attach the meeting minutes, the attorney email, the refund check, Dennis's statement, the management company emails, and the recording of Laura admitting the snow emergency rule was enacted last week. Marcus helps me make sure the language is clear and the evidence is organized. We file it online that night. The state website says complaints are typically reviewed within 10 business days. I do not know what will happen, but I know I did everything I could. If you are enjoying this HOA chaos, hit like and subscribe for more stories about standing up to nightmare neighbors and terrible rules. 3 days later, I get a call from the management company. The rep tells me the board has requested a meeting with me to discuss my concerns and reach a resolution. I ask if Laura will be at the meeting. The rep says no. Laura has been asked to step down from all enforcement activities pending the outcome of an internal review. That is the first crack. I tell the rep I will attend the meeting, but I want the HOA attorney there as well. The rep says the attorney will be present. The meeting is scheduled for the following Monday at 6 in the evening. The weekend before the meeting, I get a knock on my door. It is Laura. She is not yelling this time. She looks tired. She tells me she wants to talk. I tell her I have nothing to say to her unless it is on the record. She says she knows she has been aggressive, but she was just trying to keep the neighborhood safe. I tell her she was not trying to keep anyone safe, she was harassing me because I pushed back. She says that is not true. I tell her I have recordings, emails, and witness statements that prove otherwise. She asks me what I want. I tell her I want her to stop inventing rules, stop targeting me, and stop abusing her position. She says she will back off if I drop the state complaint. I tell her no. She says I am ruining her reputation. I tell her she ruined her own reputation when she decided to enforce rules that do not exist. She leaves without saying anything else. The meeting on Monday is tense. The board president, the treasurer, the management company rep, and the HOA attorney are all sitting at the table. I sit across from them with Marcus next to me. The attorney starts by saying the board takes my complaint seriously, and they want to resolve this matter without further escalation. He says the board has reviewed the enforcement actions taken by Laura Nelson, and they have determined that several of those actions were not supported by the governing documents. He says the board is implementing new oversight procedures to ensure all enforcement actions are reviewed by the management company before notices are issued. He also says the board is offering me a fine waiver in writing with a firm no-contact directive, meaning Laura will not be allowed to communicate with me or take any enforcement action against me without board approval. That is the payback vector. The attorney slides a document across the table. I read it. The waiver clears all fines and fees associated with the disputed violations, and it includes a clause stating that Laura Nelson is prohibited from contacting me or my property without prior written consent from the board. The attorney asks if I find that acceptable. I tell him I also want a written apology from Laura, on the record in front of the board and any residents who want to attend. The attorney looks at the board president. The president nods. The attorney says they will arrange that. The apology meeting is scheduled for the next board meeting, 2 weeks later. I almost do not go because I figure Laura will find a way to weasel out of it, but Marcus convinces me I need to see it through. The meeting room is more crowded than usual. Word got around that there was going to be a public apology, and people showed up to watch. Laura is sitting in the front row with the board president and the attorney. Her face is blank. The president opens the meeting and he says the board has asked Laura Nelson to make a statement regarding recent enforcement issues. Laura stands up and she walks to the front of the room. She does not look at me. She reads from a piece of paper. She says she regrets that her enforcement actions caused confusion and hardship for a resident, and she apologizes for any miscommunication. She says she was acting in what she believed was the best interest of the community, but she acknowledges that she did not follow proper procedures. She says she is committed to working with the board to improve the enforcement process going forward. That is it. She sits down. The room is quiet. I am not satisfied, but it is on the record. Karen is forced to apologize on the record in front of the room. That is the Karen consequence. The board president then announces that the management company has completed its internal review of the enforcement program, and they have identified several procedural deficiencies. He says the management company will be implementing new training for all board members and compliance staff, and he says they will be conducting a full audit of all fines issued in the past 12 months to ensure they were properly authorized. He also says that Laura Nelson will no longer serve in any enforcement or compliance role, and she has voluntarily stepped down from the Community Standards Chair position. That is the HOA consequence. The management company disciplines the rep who enabled it. After the meeting, Marcus and I walk out together. He tells me I just forced an HOA to admit they were wrong, rescind fines, apologize publicly, and change their procedures. He says that almost never happens. I tell him it only happened because I kept every email, every notice, every photo, every recording. Without documentation, they would have crushed me. He nods. Then he tells me the state complaint is still open and the state might follow up, but now that the HOA has settled with me and implemented reforms, the state is more likely to close the case with a warning. I tell him that is fine. I did not want to destroy the HOA, I just wanted them to stop targeting me. Mission accomplished. A few weeks later, I am home on a Saturday morning and I am shoveling my driveway after a light snow. I finish and I lean the snow pusher against my tire. I look up and I see Laura walking her dog on the other side of the street. She sees me. She keeps walking. She does not say anything. She does not take any photos. She just keeps walking. That is the moment I know it is really over. I go inside and I make coffee and I sit down at the kitchen table and I think about how close I came to losing my refinance, my equity, and maybe even my house, because one person decided to abuse a tiny bit of power. It is insane. But it is also over. The refinance closes 3 weeks later. My new rate is 2 points lower, and I am saving $400 a month. The lender never saw a lien, because there was never a lien. The title is clean. The day I get the closing documents, I take a photo of the final signed page with no readable text, and I send it to Marcus, with a thank you note. He writes back, "You earned it." A month after that, I get a letter in the mail from the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection. The letter says they completed their review of my complaint, and they found that the Harborview Coldfront HOA and the management company engaged in improper enforcement practices, including issuing fines without proper authorization and failing to provide adequate notice of rule changes. The letter says the state has issued a warning to the management company and the HOA board, and they have required the HOA to refund any disputed fines issued in the past year. The letter also says the State Consumer Protection Office has opened a case file on the management company for further monitoring. That is the final nail. The State Consumer Protection Office opens a case file, the HOA rushes to settle, and Karen is forced to resign from every leadership role. That is the outcome. I frame the letter and I hang it on the wall in my home office. Every time I look at it, I remember that you can fight back, and sometimes you win. I still live in the Harborview Cold Front HOA. Laura still lives here too. I see her sometimes when I am leaving for work or shoveling snow. She does not talk to me. I do not talk to her. The HOA has not sent me a single notice since the settlement. The new compliance chair is a guy named Tom who sends out friendly reminder emails before violations instead of fines. The neighborhood is quieter now. People are not as scared of random enforcement. The board meetings are less crowded because there is no drama. It is boring, and boring is good. I refinanced, I kept my house, I got my equity, and I never paid a single dollar of those fake fines. Laura learned that when you mess with someone who keeps receipts, you lose. I let her get the last word, because I wanted the last consequence. And I got it. One last thing. The curbside slip near miss moment I mentioned earlier. That happened during the tow standoff. Right after the tow driver left, Laura turned to walk away and she slipped on a patch of ice that the HOA plow had left near the curb. She did not fall, but she stumbled hard and her portable folding sign stand went flying and landed in a snowbank. She had to dig it out while I watched from my driveway. She was screaming the whole time about how the plow company was going to hear from her and someone was going to pay for the ice hazard. I did not say anything. I just stood there and I smiled, because that ice patch was the same kind of ice chunk she had demanded I break up weeks earlier. Karen says nobody complains, and a stack of complaints appears. That is the funny karma beat. She spent months inventing rules and harassing people over ice and snow hazards, and then she nearly ate it on the exact same hazard she pretended to care about. I will never forget that moment. It was perfect. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.